Man of Steel. Guys, the Snyder Cut is just a mere few weeks away. It comes out this month on the 18th of March. So this is my series leading up to the Snyder Cut. I'm going to be talking about Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and the original theatrical released Justice League, leading up to Zack Snyder's Justice League later this month. So we're kicking it off with Zack Snyder's debut into the DCEU with 2013's Man of Steel. It stars Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Michael Shannon, Kevin Costner, Diane Lane, and Lawrence Fishburne. After learning their planet is about to be destroyed, Kryptonians Jor-El and Laura send their newborn child Kal-El to the inhabitant planet of Earth. Now 33 years later and living under the Earth name Clark Kent, Kal-El discovers he has superhuman abilities and secretly uses them to help out others. When a Kryptonian military leader Zod from his homeworld threatens his new home, Kal-El aka Clark Kent must put his powers to the test and learn what it means to be Superman. So when Man of Steel came out, it was very divisive, and still is to this day. You have a lot of people who love this movie, and you have a lot of people who hates this movie and thinks that it's a disgrace to Superman's legacy. Now, full disclosure here, I am not a Superman purist. I'm not actually that big of a fan of the character. I like him well enough, but he's never been one of my top 3 favorite superheroes of all time. I mean, I put the towel around the cape like any little boy did and run around the house pretending that I was Superman. Every little boy did that, right? And I really enjoy the first 2 Christopher Reeve Superman movies, but as far as my knowledge on Superman goes, that is my extent of it. So take all of that into consideration and take it as you will when I say that I find Henry Cavill's Superman fine. Yeah, I think Henry Cavill in this movie is fine as Superman. I don't love his portrayal, I don't hate his portrayal. I just think he's serviceable. He does the job well. He looks great in the suit, and the suit in this movie does indeed look really awesome. Truth be told though, I just find his Superman in this movie kind of bland. Granted, a lot of this is due to the screenplay by David S. Goyer, who doesn't really give Superman all that much to do, especially in the first hour and a bit of this movie. They get the basics of the character down, he likes to save people, and he has a strong conviction to do what's good. And the movie gives us a good understanding of where this comes from by utilizing a lot of flashbacks. Sometimes I admit a little too many flashbacks that cut back to Clark's childhood. There's a great scene where Clark is discovering his powers in a classroom, and it's shot and edited in a very horrifying way, which I think fits this scene perfectly because this would be a very horrifying thing for this kid to go through. He's looking through his teacher and seeing her skeleton and her heart beating through her chest, and his senses are going haywire as his powers are kicking in. I think that this scene is done very effectively well. But as far as these flashbacks go, I honestly feel like they give more substance and more to the character of Jonathan Kent than they do to Clark Kent. A lot of these flashbacks are utilized to demonstrate Jonathan Kent's strong belief that his son should not reveal himself and reveal these powers to the world because he believes the time is not right and the world is just not ready for him. And he believes the consequences will be very dangerous and very horrible for his son. There's a scene where Clark saves his classmates after their bus has an accident going off a bridge, and during the rescue, one of his classmates catches him doing his heroic deed, which leads to him and his mother going to the Kent's house to confront Clark's parents and ask about what's going on with their son, which leads to Jonathan Kent giving Clark Kent a talk outside, which leads to him saying this.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe.
Not because he's a heartless jerk, but because he cares for his son and is conflicted because he knows he can save people, but he cares more about his safety and well-being over anything else. He believes that the result of Clark outing his powers will be disastrous and worse for his son than if he were to do nothing at all. Whether he's right or wrong, I can see where Jonathan Kent is coming from in each one of these flashbacks, and I fully understand what he believes and where he stands on Clark's powers, to the point that Jonathan Kent literally dies for this belief when he prevents Clark from saving him from the tornado on the highway because there's too many witnesses around. So these flashbacks strongly show and demonstrate the belief that Jonathan Kent had and how that belief has impacted Clark Kent, because now as a grown man, he's saving people while trying to stay inconspicuous, just as his father believes that he should. But other than that, there really isn't that much more interesting about Clark Kent and Henry Cavill's performance that I find in this movie. He walks around all stoic and he hardly ever shows any emotion, and because of this, it's really difficult for me to really connect to his character. Not to compare too much with Christopher Reeve's Superman, but with Christopher Reeve's Superman, I always found that Christopher Reeves hit something that no other Superman iteration has ever done for me, and that is that the character of Clark Kent is a character. Clark Kent doesn't actually exist. Clark Kent is Kal-El's persona on Earth. When Christopher Reeves is acting all goofy and stuff as Clark Kent, there's so many times where he reveals that that's just an act. That's not actually who he is. That's just how he acts to conceal his true identity of Superman, so that when he's Superman and he's acting heroically and he's talking in the Superman way, that's who he truly is. That's the real person. And that's something that I don't ever get from Henry Cavill in this movie. When he's Superman, when he's Clark Kent, he acts the exact same way. Also, Amy Adams as Lois Lane. Now, I like Amy Adams in this movie when she's first introduced. She has some spice and edge to her when she gives some talk back to Lawrence Fishburne's Perry at the Daily Planet, and she does come across as a pretty strong character. But the relationship that develops between Lois Lane and Clark Kent in this movie feels extremely forced to me. After he saves her when she follows him into the Kryptonian ship and takes a picture of that weird Krypton robot thing, she becomes obsessed with finding Clark and starts asking around until he eventually shows up and is like, hey, stop asking people about me. From there, it's just anytime that Superman saves Lois, they have a long stare into each other's eyes where it's like, oh, are they gonna kiss? Until eventually they do. And there's really no reason for Lois Lane to be in this movie. She doesn't really do much that impacts the story. I mean, I guess she puts that Kryptonian key thing into Clark's childhood ship that he came to Earth in and to help save the day. But even when Zod shows up and the Kryptonian lady with Zod comes to Earth to collect Superman after he surrenders himself to Zod, and she looks at Lois and is like, Zod wants her too, I'm always just like, but why? Why does Zod want her? Oh, so Amy Adams can stay in the movie. I got it. Speaking of which, let's talk about Michael Shannon as Zod, because in my opinion, Zod is where the best parts of this movie come from. I will find him! I love how this movie opens and we're introduced to Jor-El, played by Russell Crowe, and Zod's conflict on Krypton. It's such a great setup for his character, and you really get a sense of where he stands for the rest of the movie through their interactions and through talking about what their ideologies and beliefs are. Beyond that, it's just really cool to see the planet of Krypton before it's blown up in this film. The design of the planet, the sets, the tech, I think it all looks really cool, it's really creative, and I find it really interesting. And when the planet eventually does blow up, I actually feel more for the blowing up of Krypton than I do in any other Superman movie, because we've actually got to spend a little bit of time on it. Also, the goodbye from Kal-El's parents as they have to send him away is actually a very genuinely touching scene. But for the most part, I honestly don't feel like too much stuff happens in Man of Steel, and it kind of drags on until Zod gets to Earth. I love when Zod arrives to Earth and it turns into like an alien invasion kind of movie. When Zod sends out that message across the world, you are not alone, over all the television screens. It's an authentically creepy moment, and I love watching the world deal with the fact that they're learning about aliens and that they're not alone. I like seeing how that affects this world politically, socially, and I actually do wish we got more of that within this movie. And of course, when Zod arrives to Earth and reveals his plans that he wants to turn Earth into the new Krypton, this leads to the infamous third act where it's basically just a bunch of action, punching, explosions, destruction, chaos, and loud noises! And the action sequences in this movie, I mean, while being very exaggerated, they're a lot of fun to watch. They're very entertaining. Zod and Superman throwing each other around, crashing through buildings. I know this was a big discussion when this movie came out, and still is, that the destruction in this movie, especially for the last hour of it, was it too much? Did too many casualties take place during this fight between Superman and Zod? But honestly, I like this about the third act, because if two superpowered beings are fighting to the death, because Zod does tell Superman,
there's only one way this ends, Cal. Either you die or I do.
Then this kind of destruction and this kind of civilian casualties is kind of inevitable, because they didn't have any warning that this fight was really going to take place. They didn't have time to really evacuate the whole city. If anything, like some of these movies did after this movie came out, when I find that a city is completely evacuated, that there's no one in there and that's where they go to fight, I find that takes away the realism a little bit more. And it's not like Superman is using innocent civilians to throw at Zod. This Man of Steel third act destruction extravaganza with all these people running in the street as buildings are crashing around and towards them, it adds to the realism a little bit more for me and makes me feel the stakes even more of what Superman is fighting for, because if Zod's just going to do this to Metropolis, imagine what he's going to do to the rest of the world. But this of course leads to the next big controversial moment to come out of this movie, Zod Snapped Neck. Honestly, this one I don't get as much. I don't really understand why this one is so controversial. Now again, coming from someone who's not a Superman purist, who doesn't have all the knowledge in the world about the hero, but the conflict within Clark up until this point is choosing humanity or Kryptonians. Zod makes it very clear where he stands, and he won't allow Clark to have the best of both worlds. Zod is about to laser to death a group of innocent civilians. He has already made it known to Clark that he isn't gonna stop, and who or what on Earth could actually detain him. So Clark has to make the difficult decision of killing the last of his Kryptonian brothers to save those he has found a new home with. He even mourns immediately afterwards at the death of his race, for he is now the last Kryptonian left, and he feels that. I like that. I like that Clark has to choose a decision. I like that he has to choose, am I going to stand with humanity, or am I going to let Krypton die for them? Because that is a real thing. That's a real decision with real consequences that Clark has to deal with. And honestly, I like that David S. Goyer and Zack Snyder don't let Clark have the easy way out. He has to make a decision, and the one that he chooses will last. Clark feels it, and I feel it as the audience member, and it gets me that much more engaged. And after that, the last few minutes of this movie are actually the most enjoyable Superman that I get from this movie. When he crashes that satellite down in front of the military leader, and he's being a little bit cheeky with him, like, I know you're trying to look where I hang up my cape, but you know, just trust me. And then we see him go to the Daily Planet where he gets his new job alongside Lois Lane, and he actually gives a smile. We get a happy Superman at the end of this movie. So like I said, many people love this movie and many people hate this movie. And where I kind of stand, again, not as a Superman purist, I think this movie's okay. I think it's okay. I think this movie does have a lot of shortcomings, especially when it comes to the length of the story. I don't feel like this movie needs to be 2.5 hours long. I also feel like the relationship between Amy Adams and Henry Cavill as Superman and Lois Lane could have been done a little bit better, or just taken Lois Lane out of the story completely. But I like the relationship between Clark and his Earth mom, Martha. I really love the scene after he discovers his powers where he's hiding in the janitor's closet and she goes there to give him comfort. The Superman stuff is very fun to watch, and there's more than enough exciting action with some pretty good effects to keep me entertained, and everything involving Zod I think is pretty well done. Plus, Michael Shannon is just such an entertaining performance to watch. I think he steals the show in this one. Not my favorite Superman movie or my favorite Superman character, but a fun one to watch nonetheless. But I want to hear what you guys thought of Man of Steel. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you in the middle like me? Comment down below, let me know. Join me again next week when I will be talking about Batman vs. Superman. Unlike this one isn't controversial. Guys, thank you for clicking on this video and checking out my channel. Once again, my name's Zachary Milne. Thank you for talking movies with me, and hope you have yourself a great day.